Okay, should be able to hear me. Let me know if you can hear me in the chat. Okay, evening to one and all. We got Gennady in the house, we got Kay, we got A. Graham, we got Mohammed, we got Young H, Sean Isaacs, Faust. Big up everybody. So what's happening? What you guys want to talk about today? Sean Isaacs says it looks like Dylan got what he wanted. Yeah, I saw some Sun newspaper headline saying that the WBC have ordered Tyson Fury to face Dylan White next after the Deontay Wilder fight, but I didn't see them put any kind of, time limit on it, or maybe I missed it, because originally it was supposed to be February something 2021, but the WBC, from what I read in that article, just said he has to fight. Tyson Fury has to fight Dylan White after he fights Wilder if he gets past Wilder again. So I didn't really see much clarification there. Kay says a plane flew over during the Man City game with a White Lives Matter banner. Yeah. You know, I have to give credit to some Black Americans because I've seen quite a few of them now calling out Black Lives Matter. I think one of you guys actually posted something on the community page on Patreon, and it was some black woman, and she was going in on Black Lives Matter, exposing their BS, all the same stuff I've exposed about them. She was saying the same thing. And there's loads of other Black Americans as well on YouTube who are coming out and saying, you know, we don't support Black Lives Matter. We're not behind this thing. It's all a subversive far left movement. That's what it is. So I have to give credit to a certain section of the Black American community for calling it out for the BS that it is. And beyond just being a subversive, radical left wing, Marxist, pseudo-progressive, pseudo-liberal, LGBT, transsexual, destroy the nuclear family, political movement. Beyond that, just calling it Black Lives Matter, there's a certain section of every race who believe in the concept of racial superiority. They believe in elevating themselves above other races, and there's a certain section of the Black community who are behind getting themselves behind Black Lives Matter, who feel that way. That's why they like seeing white people kneeling down and all this kind of business, because it's subjugation. And I always tell people, yes, slavery, colonialism, and all this kind of stuff happened, but what do you want to do? Do you want to try and stop subjugating white people the way that our ancestors were subjugated? Is that the solution? I don't think that's the solution. I think that's only going to cause a cycle of more conflict that'll go on forever and ever and ever. At the end of the day, I weren't a slave. No black person alive was, enslaved. That was our ancestors it happened to. And while I do have an issue with the black diaspora not being compensated in terms of reparations and all that kind of stuff, because all these other groups were compensated, like the Jews were compensated, even the Japanese were compensated, and many other groups, but black people were never compensated. Of course, that is an issue, but at this point, we've got enough to be able to move forward and do for self a lot more than we're doing at the moment. And organizations like Black Lives Matter and that whole movement, it's about victim culture. It's about, we can't move forward unless you do this for us, and unless you do that for us, we can't move forward. You understand? And I'm just not somebody who supports that kind of mentality. Yeah, I'm not somebody who supports that. That's mentality is just sitting on the sidelines complaining all the time. Like, don't complain. Do something, like, for yourself. You understand? Or do something for our own communities. So, and that's another thing as well. I saw some black guy in America, and he rolled up outside a hospital with his, phone, and he was filming all these nurses, and they were mainly white people, by the way. These nurses and doctors outside of this hospital, and these nurses and doctors were all holding up Black Lives Matter signs and whatever. And at first, they thought that he was, because he's a black guy, they thought he was a Black Lives Matter supporter. So as he started talking to them about, oh, you care about black lives, right? Some nurse, some white girl nurse, came and knelt down in front of him. I was like, what is this? And then he started saying, so do Black Lives Matter when 30 black people get murdered on a weekend in Chicago by other black people? Do the lives matter then? And he was basically saying black people don't care about no black lives. Let's be real. They only care about black lives when a white person kills them. But when black people are murdering each other in insane numbers in places like Chicago, shh, nobody cares. Little kids getting killed by these gangs and stuff, these black gangs in the inner city areas. Shh, nobody say nothing. It's selective outrage. You only outrage when somebody of a different race kills a black person, but when it's our own race, nobody say nothing. It's the dirty little secret that nobody wants to talk about or address. So yeah, he started saying that, and then the killer, this was the real kicker. This guy brazen, this black American guy in front of the hospital. He said, what about abortions? The Black Lives Matter when black women are coming in these hospitals getting abortions, or coming in abortion clinics getting, do the lives of those babies matter? And literally all of the doctors and nurses were silent. If I can find that video, I think I watched it on Instagram, I think it was. If I can find that, I'll post it on the community page, but that was funny. When he started talking about abortion, I was like, oh gosh, he went there. He went there. Okay, big up Afro Soul, big up K. Yeah, let's talk about the Shannon Briggs. I'm going to get to the Deontay Wilder twerking in just a second, but the Shannon Briggs, Mike Tyson hotboxing interview, I thought it was fascinating. Shannon Briggs, being from Brooklyn, from the Brownsville section of Brooklyn, Mike Tyson felt like he was back in Brownsville. That was clear. From talking to Shannon Briggs, his demeanor kind of switched back to Brownsville mode. And the darker side of Mike Tyson came out a lot more in that interview than you would normally see when he's talking to other people. Because mentally he felt like he was back, on Amboy Street, where he grew up, running around in Brownsville, getting into trouble, seeing all the murderers and killers and drug dealers. He felt like he was back there to some degree. And so his whole demeanor got very, very dark next to Shannon Briggs. And Shannon tried to pull him out of the darkness a few times, but Mike was like, nah, I'm one of them. Mike Tyson loved the darkness to some extent. And yeah, it was fascinating seeing the dynamic between the two. Shannon is clearly a bit intimidated of Mike. You could tell that, because Mike is a little off. I remember, I don't like Vlad from Vlad TV, because I think he's, one of the people who pushes a lot of agendas and a lot of BS. But he was interviewing somebody, I forget who it was now, and they were talking about Mike Tyson. It might have been Michael J. White or somebody who he's spoken about Mike Tyson with before. And yeah, this person said they know Mike and they've been around Mike. And Vlad said words to the effect of, I've been around Mike Tyson 1 or 2 times before, and yeah, that guy is a little off. And that, to say the least, Tyson came across as a little off in that Shannon Briggs interview. Very, very off character, weird guy. I've described him before as the neighborhood bully who is a very weird guy, but nobody dare say anything because they're scared. You know them ones, the bully that's just like a weirdo, but people are scared, so they don't want to say nothing about how weird he is. That's how Mike Tyson is. Mike Tyson is a weirdo. He is not a normal, and if you can watch that Shannon Briggs interview and try to tell me that Mike Tyson is a great guy and, you know, just a fun-loving human being, come on. I'm not saying he's the devil incarnate, but I'm telling you he's a very strange man. The way his mind works is very weird. I looked in the comment section, and as you would expect with Mike Tyson interviews, there's a whole heap of sycophants in there. But the reality is, when Mike Tyson is in Brownsville mode, and when he was in Brownsville mode during a lot of his boxing career, you wouldn't have wanted to be around this guy. Right? This guy would have happily, kindly taken your girlfriend that you brought to the party. You understand? That's the kind of guy Mike Tyson was. He's described himself when he was a professional fighter as a megalomaniac. He was drunk on the power that being a famous celebrity and a boxer who can knock the living daylights out of you gave him. So, yeah, it was a very, very interesting interview, you know, hearing them talk about different stories from Brownsville and all this kind of. They are a few years apart in terms of age, so there were certain people that Mike Tyson was talking about who Shannon Briggs didn't know, and vice versa. But yeah, and there's another part I found interesting as well, because Mike Tyson, as we know, was a street criminal and he'd been to prison loads of times or been arrested loads of times when he was just a kid. By the time he was 12 or 13, he'd been arrested, I don't know, 30 times or more. So he knew about being incarcerated even then. Shannon Briggs, there was a point where Mike Tyson said that when we were growing up, if you weren't a criminal, if you haven't been to jail, then we didn't respect you. You weren't shit. And Shannon Briggs was like, facts. And you could tell that Shannon has not been to prison by the way he reacted and the way he tried to maneuver his way out of that part of the conversation without giving too much away. Shannon Briggs never been to jail. But the fact he didn't want to say, I've never been to jail, shows that he is still kind of in that Brownsville mentality a little bit. Because he still feels on some level that going to prison and having that stripe is a badge of honor. You know, that's the Brownsville mentality. So, yeah, it was a very fascinating interview. A very, very weird. I'd be amazed if anybody could watch that interview and not come away and think, wow, Mike Tyson's a flipping weird guy. All right, what else we got here? Ivan Thomas. Oh, hang on. Sean Isaac says, new discovery at Stonehenge. Worth a look. Okay, let's have a look at this now. What is this new discovery at Stonehenge? Okay. A new monument found near Stonehenge unearths more of the site's story. Stonehenge is one of the most studied archaeological sites in the world. New discovered monument made up of 20 shafts, some up to 32 feet wide and extending 16 feet deep into the ground in a large circle. Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah, that is interesting. I definitely want to read more about that. Very interesting. Shout out to Sean Isaacs for that, for the heads up on that. Okay. Yeah, big up Hassan. What do you make of Wilder twerking? LDBC are trying to justify it after calling AJ gay for all these years. What do I make of it? Wilder is a clown. We all know that he's a clown. Yeah, we all know that Deontay Wilder's a clown. And he does clown-like things. He's not a very intelligent guy. He doesn't know how his actions are going to be perceived. And yeah, he was at some family thing and there was a bunch of kids there and they're trying to make the kids laugh, twerking and all that kind of business. he's just being the goofy Deontay Wilder that he is. Do I really think Deontay Wilder is gay? I think that he's got a lot of feminine behavioral characteristics. You can tell that growing up, he was mainly around his mum. Because he behaves like a black female, like kind of a country, slightly ratchet, southern black female. That's how Deontay Wilder behaves. Very impulsive, very reactionary. Again, this is typically more female behavior than male behavior. So you can see that in Deontay. But do I think it makes him gay? No, probably not. I know why people are jumping on it and using it as a stick to beat Wilder with, because of his fans and because of Wilder himself, because they always come out with silly things and whatever. So I don't blame the people who are going in on Deontay Wilder right now. Wilder gets exactly what he deserves by way of all the stick. But personally, I just think he's a silly, goofy guy who let his guard down when maybe he didn't think anybody was filming. I don't know. Or maybe he didn't think it would go into the internet. So that's what I think about the Wilder situation. I don't really read too much into it by way of Wilder's sexuality. I could be wrong, of course, but I wouldn't read too much into that. It is a funny little incident that can, give ammunition to people who want to perpetuate the wars between the Wilder fans and the AJ fans and all that kind of stuff. It's all fun and games. Black Dynamite says, Hatman, do you think black Americans should strive for segregation and perhaps create a black state? It seems like black Americans have regressed since assimilation. Yeah, a lot of people have said this. There's a lot of black intellectuals, particularly conservative intellectuals, who say that black people have regressed since assimilation. But I would say that American society in general, to some degree, has regressed socially since assimilation. So I don't necessarily think that assimilation is the main problem. But let's say you segregated black people now in America, gave them their own state. And this has been talked about for a long time, by the way, giving black people their own state in America. And there are certain states in the United States which are so black that conceivably you could have, they could turn into black states at some point, declare themselves independent or whatever. So, for example, the state of Georgia, Atlanta, I think, is one of the blackest cities in America. It might be more than 50% black, 60% maybe. You have places like Detroit, an extremely high black population, and many other places in the US, but especially I want to say Georgia, because of the fact that there are so many black people from all over the United States, from New York and many of the big cities. Black people who are kind of getting priced out by gentrification, they're moving to Georgia, specifically Atlanta. So if that trend continues, then that state right there might become, if it isn't already, I don't think the state is predominantly black yet, but I know certain cities and whatever are predominantly black in Georgia. But if that trend continues, then you might see somewhere like that at some point in the future say, we want to become autonomous. How do I think it would work out? In the short term, it would work out very badly. Yeah, because there is a massive, what's the word to use? Lack. There's a massive lack of black leadership in the United States right now. There's an anti-intellectual culture. There is the prevalence of this hood, ratchet culture. You see, even some black people who, particularly those who are on the left, which is the vast majority, even some of them who have made it and they live a middle-class lifestyle and they earn good money, they still have this association whereby to prove that you're really still down with the cause and you're really black, you have to have this ratchet element to your personality. You have to be able to come out and start acting like a flipping buffoon or a savage in order to still be classed as black. And the problem, of course, with that is, why can't you be intellectual and people still look at you like, yeah, you're down, you're a proper black person? Why do you have to come out with this ratchetness? You see what I'm telling you? It's like with Malcolm X left all that behind. And he went, yeah, he was, militant, the Nation of Islam. He obviously left the Nation of Islam in the end. But they were militant, but they were organized and disciplined. They weren't about being ratchet. They weren't about none of that. They were about being intellectual. But there seems to be very little space for that particular black identity in modern day black America. If you are a very intellectual person and you don't have this ratchet aspect of your personality, well, you can't really be that black then. You know them ones. So if they were to have a black state in the short term in America, it would go very badly. I think very, very badly. Eventually, I mean, it might even turn into civil war in there. It would be so bad in the early stages. What having a black state would do is force black people to do for self. And maybe in the long term, it could come good, because when people are forced to do for self instead of, looking for handouts and this, that, and the other, then they can build. I mean, for example, the Black Wall Street. Now, obviously, that came under terrorist attack by racist whites, and that was in the South in America. But that was at a time when black people were far more disadvantaged than they are today. But yet they still built a successful, economic or a successful economy within that particular fairly small black community. I believe that was in Waco, was it? Was that in Waco? Or was it in Tulsa? Either Waco, Texas, or Tulsa, Oklahoma. I get confused sometimes with these southern towns and cities. But if black people could do that by organizing themselves back then why on earth can't they do it now? When there's far more liberty for black people today than there was back then. So, yeah, I think it would be very, very tough in the short term if black people segregated themselves off again and create a black state, because I just think culturally, socially, black Americans are just in such bad shape at the moment overall. Danny S says, Hatman, is it possible to get rid of the deep state? Even if the world restarted, there's still going to be hierarchies in society. Well, I think that it's a very good question. There are some people, I've been listening to a podcast on Mark Devlin's YouTube channel, and he's got a couple of these American people who are basically Trump believers. They believe that Trump is playing 5D chess and that he is actually draining the swamp. He is actually dismantling the deep state. But as you have kind of alluded to, let's say Trump is dismantling the deep state. What is going to replace it? Well, what is going to replace it, ostensibly maybe in the short term, would be not a deep state, but a state that has actual power and it is transparent about its power. Because that's what we're given in most countries, right? That your government runs the country. When really we know it's people behind the scenes that are running it. Like, powerful families, banking families, families that are involved in media, families that are involved in the arms industry, in mining, all that kind of stuff. This is what we refer to as the deep state. These families in the background who are, heads of corporations and stuff like that, they pull the strings because ultimately they're the ones with the financial clout. The government doesn't have the financial clout. It's the people in the background that have the financial clout because the government can't employ everybody, right? So they have to rely on all these corporations and etc. to employ people and to run the technological infrastructure. They rely on all these giant corporations to do it. Therefore, that gives those people a massive degree of power. Same thing with the banking industry. The banking industry in the UK and most other countries is not nationalized. It's private. So again, this gives these private entities a hell of a lot of power. So yeah, that's the deep state. let's say hypothetically Trump was to take him on, as I say, would it then turn into eventually another deep state? Probably. I think that it's going to take a great deal of education to get people to open their eyes to the way the world really works. But I guess the fear would be, from the perspective of a government, if you're going to educate people in terms of the way they're actually being manipulated, the fear would be that somebody takes this education on and they apply these tactics of manipulation and eventually become a subversive movement within your country. So, I don't know, maybe there always will be a deep state. Who knows? But maybe some deep states are worse than others. Cash Machine says, please link that. Just join Who is Hatman talking about. I'm not sure which comments you're referring to. If you remind me, I might be able to tell you. The Troll Network says, Hatman, wouldn't you say that the chickens are coming home to roost in the USA? They've backed so many revolutions in the Ukraine, Venezuela, the Arab Spring, Syria, etc. So you get what you sow. Well, I don't think that it's the case of the chickens coming home to roost, because I think that what's going on in America at the moment is by design. I don't think it's an organic movement. I think it's by design, and clearly the left in America, the hard left, they want this to happen. You understand what I'm saying? So I don't really see it as necessarily chickens coming home to roost. I could be wrong, but I don't think it's a foreign-backed thing. I think this is an internal deep state strategy in the United States. And of course, America has had many, they've had like the Civil War, they've had the American War of Independence, they've had all kind of upheaval and strife and problems in the United States during its 250-year history or something now. The American Civil War was in the mid 1800s? Was it the 1860s or something like that when they had the Civil War? So, in the grand scheme of things, that wasn't that long ago when they had a Civil War. And given the demographic makeup, the ethnic demographics of America, a Civil War is always just bubbling underneath the surface in America. So, I don't know whether it's the chickens coming home to roost. I just think it's probably inevitable. We've got a country that size with so many different ethnic groups and races. No one government can cater for all those people. This is why I say democracy doesn't work on a giant scale like that. Because you're always going to leave massive sections of the population disenfranchised. Yeah? Unless you've got an ethnically homogenous society where people, the vast majority are the same race, the same religion, etc. A society, and the population is not too big, a society like that, I think democracy will work a lot better, particularly if you've got a lot of direct democracy going on, like the Swiss had for a long time. But a country like America, 300 plus million people, all different races, speaking different languages, different ethnicities, that's surely unsustainable in the long term. You're going to have all kind of problems. Danny S says, I disagree with your view on who the world is run by. You think it's run by multiple powerful families across the world. However, I think it's beyond powerful families. Okay. Who do you think it's run by? Kay says, everyone in the comments calling him wise. Yeah, calling Mike Tyson wise. I worry about their intellectual and emotional level when they're looking at Mike Tyson like he's some kind of guru. Mike Tyson wise. Jeez, people. Okay, Arj says some Burnley fans put a White Lives Matter thing on a plane and flew it over the stadium in a football match just now. Shows racism is still around, but BLM has stoked a fire. Indeed, it has. It has. You see, it's not just saying Black Lives Matter. It's the whole kneeling thing. It's the whole, defund the police. It's like a massive, in this country, right? More so than America. Because that situation with George Floyd happened in America, okay? But for people to be protesting and being as outraged here as Black Americans are, it's a massive overreaction. Because, yes, of course, look, racism is always going to exist. As long as there are different races, there's going to be racism. Right? But reacting the way that people have in this country, it's like, it's an overreaction. It's unnecessary. You don't need to go that far with it. What exactly are you hoping to achieve? And we can see what it is achieving. Is stoking up the far right, and the racists are going to get a lot more support now. So, on both sides. So, yeah, I said from the beginning, this Black Lives Matter thing, nah. Okay, Edam says, have you seen the video of Mike slapping Dana White on the plane because he sat in his seat? No, I haven't. I haven't seen that. Kay said, to be fair, anyone who grew up like Mike is bound to be a little off. Yeah. Well, I don't want to say anyone, but a lot of people, surely. Because Mike, of course, has a brother called Rodney, who is like a brain surgeon. He's like one of the top brain surgeons in America. And he grew up in the same house, in the same environment, the same parents. But obviously, environment does have a big influence on people. Aldo says, white women jumping on the oppression bandwagon really pisses me off. They say they only got the vote 100 years ago, but white men never had a vote on whether they had to fight in the trenches. Indeed. Well, I'm going to do another video where I'm going to be showing you some Twitter, not Twitter, what's it called again? Tinder. Some Tinder profiles. And Tinder right now is absolutely full of SJWs, middle-class millennial white girls who have got Black Lives Matter, the gay rainbow, veganism, and all that on their profile. That's all there. I came across one profile. Some white girl, she was like 20. And all she had on her profile was just Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. She'd written Black Lives Matter like 20 times. I was like, man, these millennials are something else. There was even some transsexual on there. In fact, this is what Black Lives Matter is doing. It is conflating the LGBT cause with the black cause. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's trying to make the two things one. And they're doing it successfully. Because now, as you'll see in the next video, where I show these Tinder profiles, you got so many of them that they've all got the same thing on there. Veganism, LGBT, Black Lives Matter, and all this kind of shit. It's like these people are robots. They literally manufacture them in a factory somewhere. They come off a conveyor belt. They all believe the same shit. Black Lives Matter, LGBT. It's like Black Lives Matter only really became a thing for middle-class white people over the past, month? 6 weeks? Once you put something in the mainstream like that, look how quickly people take it up. Without thinking about it, they take it up. It's so easy to program most human beings. It's frightening. They're literally blank canvases. That's how the millennials are. They are blank canvases, man. You paint whatever you want on them canvases. Gennady says, Hatman, what do you think of the skyscraper 33 Thomas Street in New York? Skyscraper 33 Thomas? I don't know about it. You'll have to tell me about it. I don't think I've ever heard of that. Black Dynamite says, one thing about Mike Tyson, Shannon Briggs' podcast that disturbed me was how common rape of young boys was in Brownsville. Well, all you have to look at during, something that was going on during that same time was what Afrika Bambaataa was doing in the South Bronx. So if Afrika Bambaataa was doing what he was doing, raping young boys and, abusing young boys for many, many years, and Afrika Bambaataa was a top gangster in the South Bronx. He wasn't just any guy. He wasn't just somebody that was involved in hip hop. He was one of the top gangsters in the South Bronx. So, yeah, he had access to a lot of young boys, unfortunately. So, and I probably have to go back and say allegedly raping young boys, Afrika Bambaataa. But, loads of people have come out and directly accused him without saying allegedly. And as far as I'm aware, he hasn't taken any legal action or anything like that. So, but just to cover my own neck, I better say allegedly. Graham Coleman says, Hatman, can you please not give The Last of Us spoilers? I'm still playing it. I haven't given any Last of Us spoilers. I haven't played The Last of Us. All I've done is watch the first 30 minutes of somebody playing it through. And obviously I know the Metacritic scores, but I haven't given any Last of Us spoilers. I really don't know any spoilers. But yeah, all I know is that it's full of a lot of LGBT propaganda. Well, to be fair, I do know some of the things that happen in The Last of Us because I've read and I've, looked at videos that talk about spoilers. I promise I won't give those. But yeah, the whole thing is just full of LGBT propaganda. That's one thing I do know for sure because I've seen it. Yeah, boy says, Hatman, is Trump up to something? Since his 2017 visit to Saudi Arabia, a new royal family members have been arrested or killed. There's a connection with Bush and the Saudis with 9/11. Yeah, there's a lot of things that have happened since Trump came to power. But, is it really Trump or is it just the deep state using Trump for this particular period of their plan? Because when you look at when you look at politics in the UK, when I first came to the country in the 80s, Margaret Thatcher was the prime minister. And I talk about this a lot, right? She was the prime minister and she was famous for privatizing things, shutting down coal mines and all this kind of stuff, selling off a lot of public assets. Yeah, this is what Margaret Thatcher was known for. Well, the subsequent governments to Thatcher, none of them have rolled anything back. Some of them haven't been as aggressive as Thatcher was with regards to selling public assets off, but they haven't rolled any of it back. Understand? So the way I see it is certain politicians come in, prime ministers, presidents, etc., and they can accelerate their agenda in a particular area during this person's tenure because of the character they are, because of the amount of public support they have for a specific reason. Now, yes, a lot has happened under Trump with regards to, deals, and he moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, and the Saudi royal family has changed a lot, and they've got this new crown prince in charge and whatever. But is it indicative of him working for the good of us, or is it just indicative of him being a pawn of the deep state? Time will tell, but he has done some things that have confused me, I'm not going to lie. Like withdrawing support for the World Health Organization. See, to me, that was a great move. But is he going to follow through on that? Is he going to go back on it? Is it just a symbolic thing? Is he still trying to keep the alt-right people on his side for the coming election? Is that what it's all about? Some symbolic gestures to get himself re-elected? Or is he really trying to drain the swamp? Time will tell. But I'm skeptical because, I tend to be skeptical when it comes to anybody in a position of power, as you should be. If you're not skeptical, if you end up believing in them too much, well, that's going to give them carte blanche. You always have to keep your foot on their neck. You always have to keep them under pressure. You always have to keep scrutinizing them. I mean, that's something that Peter Hitchens has been talking about. You know, he said it's so important, and the whole corona nonsense has highlighted how far this country has fallen with regards to scrutinizing the leadership, because they've just allowed them to do whatever they want. And they haven't scrutinized any of the science. They haven't scrutinized the policies. They haven't scrutinized nothing. And Peter Hitchens was talking about how, never mind whether I'm right or wrong, you should be happy that somebody's actually scrutinizing the government, because that's how you keep them honest. Yeah, you have to keep a microscope on them at all times. Every single move they make, you have to have some kind of opposition. Or else how are we ever going to know that what they're doing is the right thing if there isn't somebody scrutinizing it? But the response to him scrutinizing the lockdown, etc., was nothing but vitriol from the public, for the most part, and from the media. Obviously, he's a member of the media, but the vast majority of the media has been against people like Peter Hitchens. So yeah, always be skeptical and always scrutinize governments and politicians. You know, they have to earn our trust. We don't give it willingly. You know, anybody with a critical mind, anyone who's sensible with common sense, you expect politicians to earn your trust, not with empty words, with actual actions. Yeah. Afro Soul says it was Oklahoma. Okay. Black Wall Street, I guess that was Tulsa, Oklahoma. Aldo says, I think I'm going to make a dating account purely just to troll girls and ask them to scrub my dishes and toilet and ask what they're bringing to the table, other than a bit of crap sex. See, these are the salient questions. these are the questions you need to be asking. One time says, do you think the Rothschild family are as powerful as they were before? I really don't know. I know they're powerful. I know they're influential in terms of compared to now and then. I can't tell you that I'm a Rothschild scholar to be able to, tell you. Yeah, boy says Trump runs America more like a business. He has created more jobs and he hasn't bombed the fuck out of countries like Bush and Obama did. Yeah, that is the narrative that some people are running with Trump, that he's created all kind of business, all kind of jobs and what have you. I don't know whether that's true. I'm not saying it isn't true. I'm just saying I haven't looked into it enough to know whether it's actually true. Because Peter Hitchens, again, he's done a lot of great work over the past couple of months. But he was talking about the economy of Britain. And he was actually saying this a couple of years ago when they were saying that, the unemployment is quite low in Britain. He said, well, actually, it's not. It's really high. And most of you know that the government introduced things like zero-hour contracts, etc. And that artificially inflated the number of people who were employed. But for all intents and purposes, and also, there's a lot of students, because of the very, very low bar now that you have to get into university in the UK, there's an awful lot of people who are not gainfully employed. They might be registered as self-employed, or they might be on zero-hour contracts, or they might be doing some useless degree at university. These people are basically unemployed. It's just the government has hidden them, done some trickery and been able to hide these unemployed people in the statistics. So I would have to look at America's economy to find out whether Trump has done something similar, in terms of him creating all these jobs and what have you. I'm not saying it's not true, but I do know, in terms of the way politicians work, that there's usually more than meets the eye when it comes to statistics, unemployment and all that kind of stuff. They're always trying to, cook the books. Yeah, boy says, I think feminists will beg for a good alpha male in a few years. Their time is done, as it is too much negative energy. Hassan says he's not wise, but he does go deep sometimes. Well, Mike Tyson is a 53-year-old man. I'm about, 13 years younger than him. 13, 14 years younger than him. He might be 54 now, is he? Because he's born in June. So, you know, to me, Mike Tyson is about as deep as I was when I was like 25. So it's all relative at the end of the day. I don't find him particularly deep. The stuff he says particularly deep. I was thinking like that when I was 25. J9898 says Mike Tyson is knowledgeable, but he's not intelligent. That I agree with. Mike Tyson is knowledgeable. He has done a lot of reading. He does know a lot of figures from history and stuff like that. Yes, I agree with that. He is knowledgeable, but he's not intelligent. I definitely agree with that. 100%. Mike Tyson is a follower. He always has been. And you see, somebody with a follower's mentality, they're usually not that intelligent. Matt says, I've recently started dating a Kenyan girl and I'm amazed at the respect for traditional norms and values, which you don't seem to see in Western women. Gives me some hope for the future. Yes, that's why I started dating African women years ago. You know, born and raised African women. Eddie Murphy, you know, gave people their heads up in the 80s. Go get yourself an African woman born and raised in Africa because, yeah, they're more traditional. But even they are being influenced by this monoculture to some degree. So it's going to become increasingly difficult even to find good African women in the future if things continue to go down the path they're going. Gennady says, do you think there's a selection process for these billionaires like Bill Gates, Bezos, Elon Musk? Do you think an initiation goes down? I don't know whether every single one of them has an initiation. I think some of them are bloodline. They're from certain influential families. And a lot of the time you won't realize it unless you actually go digging. You know, look up there. I mean, Elon Musk's dad, I know he was a very successful person anyway. Bill Gates' dad was involved in eugenics. So a lot of these people come from influential families. So they come from dynasties, basically. They're not self-made people who popped up out of nowhere. They're people who come from influential families. So I don't necessarily think that they have to go through, you know, I mean, I don't know. I'm not part of their world, so maybe they do go through certain initiations. But the fact that they already come from these influential families, what kind of loyalty are they trying to buy from them? You know, if you're somebody who they don't really know about, you're from a working class family, you don't have any, you know, aristocratic lineage, they don't know if they can trust you. So if you're coming from that kind of background, I would imagine there's probably more chance you'd have to go through initiations and they might need some dirt on you. More chance that happening if you've got a working class or just commoner background. But if you already come from one of these aristocratic families, I'm going to imagine there's less chance that you need to go through any kind of major initiations. I'm sure they have their symbolic initiations, but in terms of major initiations, I don't know, what would be the purpose of it? Maybe there's a deeper occult reasoning for needing serious initiations that might involve some very grisly things. I don't know. But how can you know? How can any of us know unless we're in those circles? Okay, Gennady says 33 Thomas Street is a windowless skyscraper in New York. It's completely concrete. Funny how it's number 33. People reckon it's a surveillance spy hub. Okay, that is very strange. I'll definitely check that out. Afro Soul says playing The Last of Us 2 right now. And it's definitely full of propaganda. The game is amazing, no can't front. Yeah, graphically and technically it looks very, very good. But I won't be buying it myself. Yeah, boy says, I do think Trump has substance. He's not a savior, but he's not all in with the cult. He could shake things up. I hope you're right. And I'm going to, after I finish this live stream, I'm going to continue listening to this Mark Devlin podcast where he's got some guy on there, some American guy called Charlie Freak, and he's a true believer in Trump. He thinks Trump has been playing 5D chess this whole time. So I'm going to hear it out. I would love to believe that it's true because we all want to see an end to the way this world is going. And we all want to see this world rescued from this dark path it's going down. But at the same time, I'm a realist. I'm not somebody that has blind faith in anything. So we'll see. G-Man Boxing, big up. The topic tonight is whatever topic anybody wants to talk about. We've been talking about all kind of different stuff. All kind of stuff, from Deontay Wilder twerking to dating to SJWs to Black Lives Matter to Donald Trump. Whatever you guys want to talk about. Muhammad said, what happened to Carly? I'm not sure, actually. I haven't heard from Carly for a while now. I hope she's okay. I'm not sure what happened to Carly. I haven't seen her for a minute. Maybe she's got a new man in her life. I want to say it's that. Carly's whipped right now. That's probably what it is. Hassan says, have you seen Dr. Umar Johnson's work? He spits facts on these liberals. Look, Umar Johnson is a very, very intelligent guy. He's very knowledgeable and he's a fantastic speaker. But unfortunately, I think he's a bit of a con man. Unfortunately, I hate to say that because somebody as eloquent and as good in debate as Umar Johnson would be very, very useful. And maybe he still has his uses, but the character of that man is extremely questionable. That's all I can tell you. And look, regardless whether his character is questionable or not, I'm sure he has been spitting facts on these liberals, as you say, Hassan. I'm sure he has. You see, some people like to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And in some instances, yeah, you might have to. If somebody steps over the line completely, it's going to be difficult to ever quote them or say I agree with them on this particular point if they step way over the line. But with Umar Johnson, yeah, he says a lot of good things and a lot of things I agree with. But in terms of his work in general and the character of him as a man, questionable. Darren says, Hatman, what order would you rate the 4 main boxing governing bodies now? WBC is an absolute joke. I would put the IBF at the top. I'll say the IBF is at the top. And in the others, I don't think it really matters what order you put them in. The WBC, as you say, might be at the bottom. The way they're moving is so unscrupulous. It might be at the bottom. But I would say IBF at the top. Slevin says, Trump job creation was exaggerated, just inflated the bubble. One Time says, what do you think about the human reptile conspiracy theory? I think it's absurd. Okay, the reptilian conspiracy theory. Well, it's one of them theories which we can't prove or disprove. So it's just an idea as far as I'm concerned. David Icke is one of the people who believes in it. And he says he's personally met people, many people around the world who have told him they've seen people shape-shift and all this kind of business. If he believes in it, I'm sure he feels like the people he came across were, credible individuals. I haven't walked in his shoes. I haven't met the people he's met. All I can tell you is I haven't seen any empirical evidence or proof that the world is run by reptilian shapeshifters. I'm not going to dismiss anything out of hand, to be honest with you. Could this world be run by non-human entities? Yeah, why not? How do you know that it's not? Why do we always assume that we know everything? We don't know shit. It's like Plato said all those centuries ago, the only wisdom is knowing that I know nothing. That's the only wisdom. Once you think, oh yeah, I know exactly what this reality is, it's just what they tell us on television, it's the earth, space, it's all very separate, we're the supreme beings on this planet and there's nothing else, I wouldn't be so quick to jump to that conclusion either. I don't know, in quantum physics they're talking about the earth being a simulation. Well, if the earth is a simulation, who created the simulation? Are we all plugged in to some type of matrix like in the movies. You know, who knows, man? It's a theory, and I don't really ridicule and laugh at people who believe in that theory. All I can tell you is it's just like the Big Bang is a theory. The idea you can run around and say, oh yeah, this Big Bang happened. How do you know? Were you there billions and billions of years ago? The evidence for the Big Bang happening is flimsy at best. I mean, you're talking about, if the universe is as big as they say it is and as old as they say it is, we are like a speck of dust in the Sahara Desert compared to the size of the universe. Probably more, it's probably even more extreme than that. Yeah, speck of dust as in the earth. And you're trying to tell me that from our vantage point on this tiny speck of dust in the middle of the Sahara Desert, which is full of trillions of grains of sand, you're trying to tell me that from our tiny little vantage point, we know that there's no other phenomenon out there that could influence what we're seeing by way of appearing that the universe is expanding. And come on, it's ridiculous to act as though the Big Bang is anything more than just something cooked up from someone's imagination with some very, very flimsy and tenuous observations they've made to try and support it. You can't tell me what happened billions of years ago. That's ridiculous. It's difficult enough trying to tell me what happened billions of years ago on planet Earth. Never mind trying to tell me what happened billions of years ago, trillions of miles away. That's ridiculous. Right? So, yeah, the reptilian theory, it's a theory, like the Big Bang. Who knows what's true? I don't know. Hassan says, by deep, I meant how passionately and openly he talks about his own personal struggles in life. Okay, I see what you're saying about Mike Tyson. Dylan says, the way Trump responded to the riots and protests made it quite clear that he is on the agenda attempting to keep the public divided. This situation could have turned positive with the right action. Aldo Steele says, funny though when white people who are not of Anglo-Saxon origin insult black people like that. Like in that gangster film, True Romance, when the Italian-American mobster gets told by the white cop he's not white. Danny S says, are you a Taurus? No, I'm not a Taurus. Yeah, boy, but I share similar traits as you. I think a lot of us here share similar traits because we are divergent minds. We're people who don't just accept what we're told by the mainstream. That's why we're all here, right? Because we actually have the capacity, unlike most people, to think for ourselves. We might not all come to the same conclusions, but that's what having a unique mind of your own, will result in. Yeah, boy says, Hatman, have you seen Merkel shaking? She's doing a Hillary. They're finished. I haven't seen Merkel lately. Slevin says, Dr. Umar has become a meme. Afro Soul says a bit. He's smart, but also a hell of a con man. Yeah, I agree with Afro Soul. He is smart. He's a very slick talking guy. I'm always very impressed. It's easy to be enamored with Umar Johnson, particularly if you're a black person, because he's such a slick talking guy. He's probably the most slick talking, quote unquote, black leader since Malcolm X, in terms of how eloquent he is and intelligent he comes across when he's on form. Like when he goes on one of them shows like The Breakfast Club, or when he does one of his talks, he's a very, very slick talker, very intelligent and articulate guy. But yeah, his character is a bit off. Hassan says, young Pharaoh made a good episode on Trump versus the deep state. Some guy posted it on the community center. Yeah, I don't follow guys like young Pharaoh. He's got like the mind of a 12-year-old boy or something. So he might say some relevant things at times, but the general immaturity of people like young Pharaoh, I just can't follow guys like that. The Troll Network says, Trump said the economy was a big fat ugly bubble as a candidate. Now that he is president, it is the greatest economy in the history of America. Yeah, boy says, I do think the world is running a fragile way. I do think the deep state is panicking. Well, is the world running a fragile way? Well, the world is only as, society is only as robust as the people are easy to manipulate, if that makes sense. So if large numbers of people started pushing back against the manipulation and not accepting it, there would come a tipping point where the powers that be, the deep state, would lose power, and all of a sudden they're very vulnerable. So it all hinges on the acquiescence of the public. That's what it all hinges on. If you don't have the acquiescence of the public, then it all falls down. But from what I can see, they do have the acquiescence of most of the public right now. I hope the deep state is panicking, but I'll need to see a lot more evidence of that before I believe it. Black Dynamite says the deep state throws conspiracies out there to muddy the waters and make the truth movement look like a joke. That's why they gave the flat earth theory so much publicity. I mean, that's obvious. I 100% agree with you. Yeah. Because the way that you have to think about how the world works is like this. If you were a member of the deep state and you saw certain movements starting, like the truth movement, what would you do to try and suppress it? Very simple. You put stories out there that are blatantly not true, right? You fund certain ridiculous conspiracy theories. You get loads of people behind it, and then you publicly dismantle it. And people, being how they are, they're going to tar all conspiracy theorists with the same brush. Oh, you're all flat earthers. Or this is what the mainstream media often does. They try to put conspiracy theorists all in the same group. And they act like they all believe the same thing. They all have the same mentality. You understand? So that is definitely happening. Why wouldn't you do that? If you are a deep state and you're worried about people waking up to the fuckery that you're carrying on with, why wouldn't you use subversive tactics like that and put out fake conspiracies that you can easily dismantle? Conspiracies that are going to get a lot of support because you promote them so much and you can easily dismantle them. Of course you do. That's a great tactic to use. So there's no doubt that that's going on. And I agree with you. I think the flat earth thing was probably that. The Troll Network says Trump has had so many bankruptcies, yet he is a billionaire. He's definitely part of the deep state. Danny S says, Hatman, do you find it disturbing that we can't fathom how nothing created everything? I don't believe in the Big Bang. I don't think we're a speck of sand in the universe. I mean, who knows, man? Who knows? That's what they say, right? They say the Earth is a speck of sand in the universe. And going by what they say, I just don't see how the Big Bang Theory, based upon their model of the universe, is something that people could believe to be true with any degree of certainty. It's just an idea that was cooked up in somebody's mind. Big up Henry Atkins. Danny S says, as far as I'm concerned, the universe circles around us. Oh, maybe you're right. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff inside quantum physics, which is very interesting, with regards to the nature of reality, that without observing the physical world, it doesn't exist. I guess that's like, is it Schrodinger's cat? That whole concept. Danny S says, how come we can't recreate the Earth? How can't scientists recreate a spinning ball with water attached without falling off in a vacuum like the Earth? I don't know. Are you hinting at you may be a flat earther? If you are, I got no problem with flat earthers. I don't myself subscribe to that theory because the flat earth models don't work. I've looked at them with an open mind. I wasn't one of these condescending people going in there laughing at all the flat earthers. No, I looked at it with an open mind, and to me, none of those models work. But are there a lot of questions I've got about the nature of the earth and space? And yeah, there's a hell of a lot of questions I've got. Loads of questions. And the flat earthers do ask some very good questions, to be fair. This is why I don't ridicule them, because they are asking questions, and you should always question everything. But personally, I don't subscribe to the flat earth model. It doesn't work. The Troll Network says, "Man, have you come across a speaker known as Imran Hussein? He predicted the Arab Spring uprisings." Yeah, you're talking about Sheikh Imran Hussein, right? He is an Asian who was born and raised in Trinidad. There's a lot of Asians in Trinidad. And then he became religious. Yeah, I know Sheikh Imran Hussein. He was a friend of Morris Herman, who was this Jewish guy that I used to watch a lot on YouTube, who apparently is now dead. I say apparently because you never know. Things are not always what they seem, but ostensibly, his YouTube channel got deleted. Morris Herman, that is. And he died last year. I think it was around September. And he was a friend of Sheikh Imran Hussein. He did several interviews with him. He went to visit him. Sheikh Imran Hussein lives in, where does he live? Is it Malaysia or one of those islands out there? I think it's Malaysia. Or is it Singapore? I don't know. Somewhere around there. Hassan says, "Hillary Clinton has been in court a lot these days for her dodgy emails. No one seems to be covering it in the media." You have heard this too. Troll Network says, okay, yeah, read that one. Yeah, boy says, "Mainstream media has been watched 20% less since 2018. You know, this is one of the things that cracks me up, right? With this whole corona nonsense, is you put all this evidence in front of people's faces that the virus has been exaggerated, which you cannot possibly argue that this virus has not been exaggerated at this point. When even the CDC are saying that the fatality rate is similar to flu. You cannot argue, the numbers have not been there. Neil Ferguson said, according to the Imperial College model, with no lockdown, Sweden would have had 80,000 deaths. They've had less than 5,000 deaths last I checked. Where's the 80,000? Okay, so you cannot, World Health Organization said the fatality rate was going to be 3.4%. It's over 10 times less. So nobody could possibly say, if you've actually looked at the figures, that it hasn't been exaggerated. But yet when you present this to a lot of normies, they say, well, I don't see why it would be exaggerated. Like the cognitive, they can't even get their heads around the fact that even the mainstream sources, if you look at the data, are admitting that it's been exaggerated. And they say, but why would they exaggerate it? I saw David Icke's son, I think it's Gareth Icke, and he was also encountering the same problem with presenting people with facts and their minds just cannot process the facts. Yeah, but why would they exaggerate? It doesn't matter why. They have exaggerated it. You have to first point out the fact that a crime or a deception has happened. Then you can worry about why they did it. But you first have to acknowledge that it's been done. These normies won't even acknowledge that it's been done. They're still in complete denial, but I don't see why they would do it. How would they benefit? Loads of people have benefited. And I'm coming around to, the comment there where you said the mainstream media has been watched 20% less since 2018. The media has made an absolute killing from Rona. And they're making an absolute killing from Black Lives Matter. These media organizations, the corporations that own them, they are making so much money right now. They're like pigs at a trough. It's a bonanza for the mainstream media right now. A bonanza. So if you want to look at, some people who have benefited, media's benefited massively. Their viewing figures and their website hits have gone absolutely through the roof since lockdown. Facts. So they benefited. Governments benefited because now they've got more power and less accountability. Certain major corporations have benefited because of the fact that so much of their competition by way of smaller businesses and certain corporations as well, quite large businesses, but certainly mostly smaller and medium-sized businesses that provided a certain level of competition, they're all going to go bankrupt. Okay, a lot of them are going to go bankrupt. They're going to go bust. And that allows giant corporations to come in and grab up a whole extra section of the market which they didn't have before. This is all facts. Okay, so there are plenty of people who benefit from this. People need to get their head around the reality that the government is not running the country for the people. They don't give a shit about fucking the people over. As long as they're taken care of, and most of these government ministers have corporate jobs once they leave office. Again, this is all facts. Look at Tony Blair. Tony Blair made more money after he left office than he made when he was prime minister. That's even mainstream news. Like you can find that out easily. So that's the way the world works. That's the way the country is run. It's a corporate parliament. They don't give a shit about people losing their jobs and all that kind of business, as long as they're taken care of. And of course, that just gives the corporations an even greater control over the job market, right? You saw what Amazon did a few weeks back, hiring an extra 200,000 people in America during a lockdown when people are going bust. And they're hiring more people. So yeah, the media are one of the entities, should I say, that has benefited massively from what's happened so far this year. They can't believe their luck. That's where they're going in. They can't believe their luck, because that's a dying industry, the news media. They've been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking for years. Now you get a lot of these newspapers who have gone online completely. They don't even make a physical print copy of their newspaper anymore. And some of them, or many of them, they're behind the paywall. That's because they don't make no money anymore. So not only are they only online, but they're also behind the paywall. I'm not knocking them for being behind the paywall, but I'm just saying this is indicative of the fact that they're struggling financially. Yeah. So they're having to do this. But with this Rona thing, oh my gosh. And with all the stuff that's going on now, the Black Lives Matter and all this other stuff, yeah. It's like a revival for them. Black Dynamite says, Hatman, have you seen the new PS5 event? Nearly every single game had a female character. Yeah, I did see it. And indeed, same like the movies, innit? With most of the movies now, the main characters are females. A. Graham says, I once remember seeing a list of countries who did not have a private banking core behind their government. Syria, Libya, Cuba were the ones I can remember. Iran as well. Yeah, it was most of the countries that are in America's crosshairs. In the West crosshairs. And North Korea as well. They don't have, they've got a national bank and I think they print their own currency and all that kind of business. North Korea. And they're all the countries, of course it's not a coincidence, that are in the crosshairs of the West. Libya, now, they're completely, fucked after they took down Gaddafi. Danny S says, I don't believe in the flat earth, but I also don't believe the mainstream media science model. A water ball spinning at 1,000 miles an hour through a universe at 1 million miles per hour. I think we're the center point and the only planet supporting life. Yeah, there's a lot of people who have, heard talking in these kind of circles, where we're free thinkers who believe something similar to you, and you could be right. I definitely can't say you're wrong. The Overtrain says the normie paradigm. They suffer from Dunning-Kruger. Danny S says the deep state want us to feel small and worthless. That's why they came up with the universe model. It makes us feel so insignificant, when in reality, every single person is special. Again, you could be right, because we are, if we look at us compared to the animal kingdom, we are so different from the animals in our capacity for logical intelligence. We're so different. And that has always puzzled me. Can that really come about through evolution, natural selection, to have a species in human beings who are so drastically different from the rest of the animal kingdom? See, this is why in religion, They believe that, or Christianity, should I say, they believe that human beings were put here by God to be the stewards of the earth, to rule over this earth. We were put here for that purpose because there's a logic behind it. Because you look at the animal kingdom and you think we're so different from the animals, you know, in the way our societies are structured, in the things we can do, in the way we can think. We're so different. And on top of that, we're not as physically robust as animals. Not even close. Like a 150-pound chimpanzee could tear a 300-pound man to pieces. And not just the physical strength, but even their immune systems are much stronger than ours, animals. I don't know whether it's always been the case, but certainly in the time I've been alive, it's always been that way. But I definitely agree with you from a psychological point of view. You know, this whole world is run by manipulating human psychology. So yeah, they want us to feel small and worthless. And also, this is why they're suppressing the amount of dissenting voices about lockdown, about, you know, all the stuff that's going on at the moment. They're trying to make us feel as though there's not that many people. Like when they were doing the lockdown protests, they always tried to underreport how many people were there. You see, this is psychology, because the vast majority of people want to go along with the winning side, or they don't want to come out in support of something unless it's already got a lot of support. You see it? So that's how they can actually control human behavior, by making us believe that we're powerless and we can't do anything, and that there's nobody else out there. Very few people out there who think like us. And there might be more than we realize, truth be told. I still don't think there's anywhere near enough, but there might be more than we realize. Jay says the public fear from COVID-19 will act as a catalyst, and that as a result, unfortunately, people will acquiesce to nefarious social changes that will be disguised as positive. People are so dumb. Yes, unfortunately, that seems to be the way it's going. Dogfart says, Hatman, do you watch Speaker's Corner debates? That tall Muslim Mo Hijab seems to wash these atheists. No, I don't. I haven't been to Speaker's Corner in a long time. Many years, actually. My dad used to love going to Speaker's Corner when my parents still lived here. My dad loved Speaker's Corner. He was there most Sundays. He just found it so fascinating. But nah, I don't really watch the Speaker's Corner video on YouTube and stuff like that. I only watch them things. Yeah, boy. Okay, yeah, boy says Neil Ferguson is a turd. Tony Blair looks fucked now. He looks like a vampire. G-Man Boxing says, who will the next serial killer podcast be about? That's a good question. I think it might be about those two guys who used to play Thriller. I forget what they're called now. They used to play, I shouldn't laugh. Why am I laughing? They used to play Thriller when they're about to kill them. It's just such a bizarre thing. They'll play Thriller. Were they called the Thriller Killers? The Troll Network says George Galloway's The Killings of Tony Blair made a documentary about how much Tony Blair has made after leaving office. He's made loads. He made more after leaving office than he made when he was in office. And so when people confront that reality, then you'll understand much better how society is run and why it's run in this particular way. Why politicians make the decisions they make. They're not worried about what benefits us, the people. They're worried about what benefits their paymasters in the corporate world. It's quite simple, actually. If the lockdowns are going to benefit certain giant corporations, then that's what they're going to do. They're going to have the lockdowns. It's very straightforward. If Bill Gates and various pharmaceutical entities are going to benefit massively from forcing everybody to take a vaccine, then that's what the government's going to back. That's who's paying them at the end of the day. So, that is what that is. Slevin says the masses are bored. Government have provided bread last few months but forgotten the circus. Now sports are back on. People will slowly get distracted and not bother with stuff like Black Lives Matter. Maybe, but how long will this easing of the lockdown last? Because they really seem hell bent on getting these vaccines into people. Black Dynamite says, I'm tired of YouTube's trending page. Nothing but transgenders and bloody PE teachers. Oh, that bloody PE teacher. YouTube is part of the problem. Yeah, YouTube is terrible at this point. It is a fucking absolute shit show. Ever since the lockdown started, YouTube has just been going downhill steadily. And YouTube has been going downhill for years, ever since Google bought it, really. But, you know, in terms of the content on YouTube, it is so political now. It's so hard left, pseudo-progressive, pseudo-liberal, LGBT, just promoting everything the deep state is about right the way across the board. They're going 10 toes down right now, YouTube. They're not even making it ambiguous anymore. One Time says, what's your opinion on Ty and Booth? Ty and Booth is a very strange man who is occasionally funny and also occasionally says stuff that I cannot support. That's what I'll say about Ty and Booth. Very strange guy. He is sometimes funny, but other times the stuff he says is way out there. The Overtrained says, I often wonder if animals think that we're stupid and maybe they've been here longer or have seen something we haven't, so just get on with it, rather than us just think we can run things. Madness. Yeah, you do wonder, innit, what the animals think about us. Hassan says, I swear Prince Philip doesn't even look like he's alive. Some people are saying he's dead, and that's possible. That's very possible. The reason I say it's possible Prince Philip is dead is because they like having state funerals and stuff like that, innit? The royal family. They like state funerals. And so, you can't really have a state funeral in the middle of a lockdown. So they probably want it to be eased a bit and then announce his death as happened, you know, as having happened recently when really it might have happened several months ago. So yeah, I think that's plausible. Gennady says, what do you think about those Ukrainian twin sisters that got run over on the motorway and got up mind control escapees? Richard D. Hall did a very good episode on that. So if you haven't seen, I think it's called A Madness Shared or something like that on Richard D. Hall's YouTube channel. And it's also on his website, richplanet.net. He did a real good episode about those twin sisters who got run over, and he explored the possibility of mind control escapees. Bizarre stuff. That's all I can tell. Very bizarre. Very bizarre. Not just what they did, but the way they were treated was bizarre. Danny S says YouTube peaked in 2016. Well, it's all a matter of, you know, personal opinion, innit? For me, from the time when I enjoyed YouTube most was around 2009, 2010, 2011. For me, that was like the golden age of YouTube. Maybe from 2009 through to 2012, that kind of era. That's when I really liked YouTube. In terms of being a YouTube content consumer, in terms of being a content creator, it's also gone downhill, but in some ways it's improved as well, depending on what kind of content creator you are. In terms of doing what I do on YouTube, which is just boxing news and boxing discussion, it's still alright. You know, if you want to talk boxing and nothing else but boxing, it's still okay right now. But if you want to talk anything else outside of that, you've got a very limited scope on YouTube these days. G-Man Boxing says, Hatman, how long do you think these lockdowns will keep going? I see more people pissed off about lockdown. 10 COVID cases in 2 days in Ireland. Most people I've met seem to be waking up. I would hope so. How long I think they're going to rinse this lockdown thing for a long time. And I'm talking about years. I hope I'm wrong. I want to be so wrong, but I think they're going to rinse it for years. To be honest. Because it's such a convenient tool. Why wouldn't they rinse it? So that's why I think they're gonna rinse it. And the more people resist, the more excuse they have for being draconian. Okay, now we're gonna bring the military in. So how do you want to play this game? You know what I mean? I just think it's such a useful tool for them. I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see. And I did read an interesting article on the BBC the other day where they were basically saying that lockdowns may not be the right policy in the third world. Well, fucking hell. Newsflash, of course they're not the fucking right policy. The BBC article didn't outright say it's not the right policy, but they said it might not be because of the fact that in Africa, for example, the life expectancy is much lower than it is in Europe, and whereby the vast majority of COVID victims are over the age of 60, in a lot of African countries where they don't have a very old population, can they really justify locking down the whole country when it's not going to be that many people die relative to the size of the population? Do you understand? That's one of the things they said in the article. They also said in most African countries, you've got a whole heap of people with all kinds of different diseases, malaria, HIV, typhoid. They've even got the bubonic plague is still in Africa. Oh yeah, they still got the plague. They still got leper colonies in Africa. So when you've got people with all these terrible diseases, how on earth can you justify locking the country down so these people can't get treatment to save a tiny percentage of the population who are over the age of 65 with comorbidities? How can you justify it? So the BBC article did actually say maybe it's not the right thing for these, excuse me, right thing for these third world countries to do, possibly. Well, no, there's no possibly about it, of course. Anybody with common sense knows there's a fucking disaster locking down a third world country. What, if you want to destroy your own economy and create a humanitarian crisis, then have a lockdown in an African country, because you'll end up exactly with that. Not just a humanitarian crisis, you're going to have all kind of crime go through the roof in these African countries because of lockdown. It's just, yeah. All of the problems we're going to see in the West over lockdowns are going to be magnified tenfold in third world countries. So I hope I'm wrong about lockdowns. I really, really hope I'm wrong. But I think they're going to rinse it. And they definitely want to get these vaccines into people. Clearly. They clearly want to get vaccines. Danny S says, Hatman, didn't you question Richard D. Hall, paraphrasing here, but didn't you say he could potentially be an agent? I don't remember saying that about Richard D. Hall. I've mentioned Richard D. Hall loads of times here on Patreon, and I've always, as far as I can remember, spoken very highly of him. I guess anybody with a platform could be a potential agent, but I like Richard D. Hall's stuff. I've spoken very highly of him for quite a few years here. I'm not saying I agree with everything that he does and all the conclusions he comes to. I think some of the stuff is a bit goofy that he covers, but that's all part of the... See, the thing about Richard D. Hall is he's not just a researcher. He's not just an alternative thinker, but he's also an entertainer, and I think he tries to be. Yeah, he tries to be an entertainer. And I like that element of Richard D. Hall's work. The fact that it's kind of entertaining. It's very low budget. It has a 1990s, 1980s Britain feel about his work. And obviously, you know, I have a lot of fun memories from the 1980s and 1990s, you know, late 80s in the UK and 90s. So there's a nostalgia element as well about what Richard D. Hall does that I like. And even somebody who's an agent, they can still do good work. And I'm not saying Richard D. Hall is, but even somebody who is, it doesn't invalidate everything that they do. You know, there might still be some value in some of the things that they do. I take it on a case-by-case basis. But generally speaking, I like Richard D. Hall's work. Danny S says, I watched the documentary on the DC snipers the other day. Very interesting. Yeah, I remember that whole DC snipers thing. There's probably a deep, deep story behind that because it was very strange. Danny S says, in 2016, YouTube for a creator was the best. Everyone was monetized, even controversial topics, but not anything against. Well, actually, no. The first time I got demonetized was around 20. When was the Jimmy Savile thing? The Jimmy Savile thing happened about 2012, wasn't it? Jimmy Savile? I did a video about Jimmy Savile and deep state pedophilia right when the Jimmy Savile thing came out in the media. Jimmy Savile died in, was it 2011 or 2012? And then a year later, he got exposed. Whenever he got exposed, that's when I did the video, and I was demonetized immediately when I did the Jimmy Savile video. And that was the first time any of my videos had ever been demonetized, was because of that Savile thing. And later on, when you got demonetized, they put like a red symbol next to your video. Like if you go into your YouTube account and where your videos are on the video page, normally you'd see a green symbol when you're monetized with like a dollar sign. But when you're demonetized, they put a red symbol. Okay, and later on they introduced a yellow symbol, which means limited ads. But when I did that Jimmy Savile video, there was no symbols. Like, they didn't even have a proper demonetization infrastructure in YouTube then, that they could still remove ads from your videos. And so that Jimmy Savile video had no sign next to it. It didn't even have a sign that said it was public. You know the sign that's like a globe? Everything was gone. And when I made that Savile video, my views across all my videos started plummeting. So I was like, you know what, I gotta remove this video. Because they clearly don't like the fact that I made this video about Jimmy Savile and the royal family. So I removed it, and then my channel went back to normal. And I remember telling people at the time in my Facebook group that this has happened. And of course, the normies were calling me paranoid. Oh, YouTube wouldn't do that. Why would YouTube do that? They don't have an agenda. They let anything on their platform. And I said to them back then, YouTube is going to become more and more corporate as we go forward. And of course it has. And there's going to be more and more censorship as we go forward. It's obvious. Anybody with eyes to see and ears to hear could have seen that that's the way YouTube was going to go. Even as far back as then, 2012, you could see it was going that way. And gradually they've been, tightening the net. Slevin says, have China done over the West? They decide what footage gets released from their country. Very controlled and obedient society. No, I don't think China has done over the West. I think that the West have been inspired by China. Yeah, I think the West have been inspired by China. Look at the way China's response to coronavirus was championed by the Western media. They all championed it. I think that China is the blueprint. As, David Icke says this and many others, I think China is the blueprint. I think that the deep state in the West, look at what they've done in China and how obedient their citizens are and how strong their economy is. And they think, you know what? We'll have a bit of that. We'll go down that road. So I think that's what's going on. I don't think that they've done the West over at all. I mean, just look at who America is in debt to. America is not in debt to China by accident. They're in debt to China because they decided to be in debt to China. Understand? They decided, you know what, we want to start lending money from China. We want to start exporting manufacturing to China. They decided all this. It didn't happen accidentally. So I think they're modeling Western society on Chinese society at this point. And I've been saying this for 2 years or so now? One time says, in one of your podcasts, you said that a criminal career is not a viable career anymore. If you look at the Panama Papers, it's full of criminals that never spent a day in prison. Well, I was referring to the UK. Yeah. In other parts of the world, yeah, it might still be viable to be a criminal. But in the UK now, if you're some, ethnic minority, black kid in the inner city, being a criminal is not a viable career option. It's just not viable. You're going to end up spending most of your life in prison. You're going to end up strung out on drugs, or you're going to be dead. That's what's going to happen to you. 99.9% of you try to go down that path. It's not a viable career option. Back in the days, like in the late 80s, early 90s, I'm not advocating it, but it was a much more viable career option because it was easier to get away with crimes back then. Yeah. Brixton was known for steaming, where people would rob banks on the fly. Certain Brixton gangs would just storm into high street banks and rob them on a whim. They're walking together. Oh, this one looks easy. You want to go in now? Okay, let's go in. And they'd steam into the bank, rob it, come out with grands. You understand? Bank robbery, post office robbery was a lot more prevalent back then in the 90s and the 80s. So being a career criminal was more viable back then. You stood a much better chance of getting away with what you were doing. And particularly during the height of the crack era in the 1990s, people were making insane amounts of money. And there was a point when it was illegal for police to be able to open a criminal's mouth and search inside his mouth. So all the crack dealers just used to keep crack underneath their tongue, you see. So during them times, the drug industry, robberies, all that kind of stuff, people were making crazy amounts of money. And there were some people who sailed off into the sunset with their proceeds from crime. But today, with all the surveillance, with all the informants, with all the social media, you're not going to get away with being a career criminal, man. You might have a year or something like that where you got a nice little run going. You're going to get taken down. You're going to get robbed. You're going to end up in prison. And prison is not the place to be. These little kids might think it's their rite of passage to go Feltham or whatever. Yeah, when you're a little kid and you got a couple years to burn. Once you start catching serious charges and they're putting you in prison for 10 years, 15 years, you've just wasted your life. You know what I mean? And that's what's going to happen if you go down that road. Slevin said, most people won't get vaccinated, will only be old people and with underlying health conditions. Well, Australia, which is one of the most authoritarian countries in the Western world, is terribly authoritarian, Australia. One of their senior politicians has come out and said that we won't force people to get vaccinated, but if they don't get vaccinated, there is going to be serious consequences for them, which basically means you won't be able to travel, you won't be able to get employed most places, you won't be able to enter, cinemas, restaurants, sports events, so on and so forth, if you don't get vaccinated. So yeah, they're not going to force everybody to get vaccinated, but they're going to make it so impossible for you to do anything unless you do, that most people are going to just end up biting the bullet and getting vaccinated. And in the UK, there are rumblings that something similar could happen, although the UK is not as authoritarian. It's not as overtly authoritarian as Australia is at this point. Australia is just, wow, they've really gone hardcore fascist over there in terms of how authoritarian it is. And it's been like that for a good couple years now. So yeah, Australia not the place to be. Beautiful country, but in terms of the way the government and the deep state there is running it, yeah. Danny S says, even Sandy Hook videos were monetized back then when it happened. I remember ads on videos, but now nearly all the footage has been stripped down. Yeah, some people were still being monetized, but I got demonetized for the Savile video. You know what I mean? In fact, I'm sure I did a Sandy Hook video as well. And I swear that got demonetized too. I did a Savile, and now that I come to mention, I did a Sandy Hook, and they both got demonetized. But back then, the demonetization wasn't as widespread. So some people might get demonetized, but a lot of other videos would slip through. But now, if you step over the line, everybody who makes a video about a certain subject, for the most part, is getting demonetized or having their channel shut down. unless you've got like 2 viewers or something and nobody, but because of the algorithms as well, they've improved their algorithms. So the algorithms can even zero in on what you say in the video and your actual speech, never mind what you put in the title. They can zero in on what you say and demonetize you from that. So the YouTube technology is a lot more sophisticated now. The Overtrain says, Hatman, do you think the Queen is a lizard? Do you, but really powerful people, do you think the royal family are? Oh, but really, how powerful do you think the royal family are? To me, they can't have given up that power, just styled it out. Yeah, I definitely think they're a lot more powerful than the mainstream media let on. Definitely. As far as do I think the Queen is a lizard? No. but what do I know? Black Dynamite says it. So if America and China were working together or with each other behind the scenes, where does Russia fall into all this? They seem to be against a lot of the agendas that the West supports. Well, ultimately, you're going to have a small core of people at the top of Russia, a small core of people at the top of America, a small core of people at the top of Britain, and the same for China. You have to some degree, cater to the sensibilities of the people in your own country, or else you won't stay at the top in your country for very long. You understand? This is why the approach has to be a bit different in the UK to the way it is in America, to the way it is in China, to the way it is in Russia. You have to appease your own people to a certain degree. Yeah. That's why you see these differences in the way these countries are run. But America has been working with China, not just behind the scenes, but overtly. I mean, we all know it's not a secret that America is massively in debt to China. That's where most of the national debt is for the US. Why have they got themselves so indebted to China? They've been working with China. China's like, not only the factory for America and much of the world, but also they got a lot of money if you want to lend money. So America's been doing that. If you want to borrow money. Slevin said the media championed it, but China have shares in all these media companies. Many countries were reluctant to lock down and were put under pressure by the public scared. Yeah, but the government, right, if you've seen the powers that they've grabbed through like the coronavirus bill, those are real powers. Those are things they couldn't do before. You understand what I'm saying? They didn't have to grab those powers. If it was really China and the government of the West are not in bed with China and they're not trying to copy China, they didn't have to bring the coronavirus bill in. They could have said, look, we're going to leave it to the people and, we're going to recommend that people stay home and this, that, and the other. But we all know, we should all know, that the coronavirus was massively exaggerated. Why did the government not point out the fact that it's massively exaggerated? The government just accelerated and intensified the panic. So I don't see any credence to this view that it's China taking advantage of the West. No, all the Western governments have behaved exactly like the Chinese government in terms of their attitude towards COVID. Oh, it's deadly and it's serious. And that is in direct contradiction to the reality. The fact that the case fatality rate is actually about the same as a mildly bad flu. So if it was China versus the West, the Western governments, never mind what the media is doing, the Western governments wouldn't have been pouring fuel on the fire and making people panic. They would have been saying, actually, this is a bit exaggerated, but they weren't. Because they're going for the same model as China. They want to be able to lock down. They want to be able to have an acquiescent society. That's why. Yeah. This whole idea that it's the West versus China, if you look at what's actually happened, it doesn't make sense that it will be the West versus China. And the West and China's, controlling everything. It just don't make no sense to me. That's how they're selling it in certain, aspects of the media. But I think it's the West, the deep state in the West is taking inspiration from China. Why wouldn't they? China has got one of the most powerful economies in the world. They've got a subservient, obedient population. Tell me why the deep state in the West wouldn't want to copy China. It's just advantage. It suits them to copy China. Richard D. Hall says, have you seen the statement analysis expert Peter Hyatt's take on Madeleine McCann's disappearance? Expert says McCann's accidentally killed Madeleine and hid the body. Yeah, I did see that. A. Graham says, Hatman, would you take a vaccine if it was the only way you were allowed to travel and work, etc.? Well, I won't. I work for myself, so that's not going to affect me in terms of work. In terms of travel, I wouldn't take it. I'm not taking a vaccine, and that's that. So if it means I can't travel, maybe there's some way to go get around it or something. I don't know. Maybe you can say that you've got a religious aversion to it or something that you can come up with, because there's going to be a lot of people, as you say, who don't want to take it. And maybe there'll be a window whereby you can get out of the country before they say, you must be vaccinated. Because right now they're just saying that you have to wear a mask on all public transport, including planes. And I think it's up to certain carriers. There are certain airline companies who are saying, yes, you have to wear a mask, but other airline companies are saying you don't. So there's still a small window of opportunity. The Troll Network says, Hatman, what's your opinion on the Soviet offensive plans? Controversy in that Hitler counterpunched Stalin and caught him off guard just before Stalin was about to launch. Maybe I'll do a whole episode about I'm going to do an episode about World War II, specifically the D-Day landings, but maybe I'll expand more on what you're just talking about in that episode. The Overtrain says, Danny S., I hear what you're saying. In the same way the Italian mob is apparently broken up, the royal family had massive power. So the best thing to do would be to pretend to be celebrities. Yeah, I think they've got a lot more power than they let on. I don't know whether they're the top of the ladder. I don't know whether they're the top of the ladder, but yeah, I definitely think they've got a lot more power than they let on. All right, I'm going to end this live stream here, people. Thank you for joining me once again. And I'll catch you midweek, maybe Wednesday. Probably put up an episode on Wednesday. Aim for Wednesday, and then another one on the weekend. So yeah, shout out to everybody. Catch you on the next one. I'm out.